Hello and welcome back to You're on the Air with your host, The Formal Psycho, at www.youtube.com/The Formal Psycho channel. And today, boys and girls, I'm going to be reading you a story. Well, not much of a story, more of a diary entry from a good soldier in the Belkan Army known as Michael Khor. This took place back in 1995 during the height of the Belkan War, when the Belkan government was elected a alt-right wing party, and they began to invade their neighbors that were formerly their own territory to reclaim those natural resources found in those territories for themselves. Well, as many of you know, the war didn't go so well for the Belkans, and they ended up with dishonor and disgrace more than anything else. So, I will begin by reading his first diary entry. Entry 1. April 13th, 1995. Weather fair. 5 days have gone by since I arrived on the battlefield. It's been 5 months already since I enlisted and I started this journal, and I'm still not used to writing it. After all that intense training, I'm finally here to lay down my life for peace in the fatherland. It's just so wonderful. It's supposed to be April, but the mornings near the border are cold as ever. It was freezing at 6 o'clock roll call this morning, but the sky was clear blue. The mission the unit I belong to, the Belkan Army 8th Armored Division, 3rd Infantry Unit, Tolhund, is mainly defense and to master the enemy on land. Everyone agrees that Tolhund Company are the most competent, bravest, toughest guys in the Belkan Army. And even among us in our leader, Captain Erhardt, he is a mighty man who, with just 3 men and their Panzerhausen, made a nighttime surprise attack against Ustio tank force and obliterated them. He's usually a very gentle, talkative man who's always quiet, telling us stories of his son he left behind in his hometown. Whenever he talks about him, he gets a warm, friendly look in his eye. Yet once he's on the battlefield, they become cold eyes of a tiger hunting his prey. His look is so sharp it could pierce iron paint plating, and even his voice when he calls out makes you shriek back. Quiet chatter like always. I had dinner by the side of the tent together with my comrades, surrounded by warmth. Tonight's main dish was grilled chicken and boiled potatoes. Rations, of course. I was a bit abstain at first, but the fact is, they grow on you once you get used to them. Maybe I'm just a bit closer to being a real soldier. Our rations are staple foods: coffee, cigarettes, and caramel for dessert. 10 items totaled. A full course meal in the battlefield will wash away a day's tiredness and tensions away. I'm reminded of camping as a child, eating dinner surrounded by warmth with my comrades under the starry heavens, and the nostalgic feeling. Night has fallen and it's still chilly outside. In another 30 minutes, it'll be bedtime. Tomorrow, our company's headed to reinforce the defense of Route 171, a major highway in southern Belka. Michael Khor. Entry 2. April 15th, 1995. Weather clear. As we approached our destination at Route 171, great plumes of black smoke robbed my sight. The countryside was smothered with the smell of gasoline and the fragrance of gunpowder. The smell of the battlefield gets me going more than my mom's own cooking. A sniper called Cowboy murmured, stroking his G3 with his tar-covered fingers. Some hours before we made it to our destination, a group of UCO aircraft raided the Belkan forces in the area on Route 171 and dealt devastating blow to the units stationed there. At present, we are hidden in the middle of the woods some 50 kilometers away, unable to approach our destination at Area D27 to relieve the defense. When we got here, there were soldiers, young ones, who'd returned from the front, soldiers who were supposed to relieve the defense just like us, soldiers being carried away to the medical tent, howling radio messages with no answer. Intense images crossing so quickly in front of me. First time I laid eyes on the sight, a fierce nausea assaulted me. My face sheet white, and before I knew it, I'd fallen to my knees on the spot. The face of the captain who'd come back from the front covered in soot, and even though the glint in his eye was all I caught, it shined with anger, like a red moon in the night sky. He grabbed me through the neck and screamed at me, and tend to the wounded soldiers. I hastily wrapped bandages with my unaccustomed hands carried off the wounded on stretchers to the helos and helped my comrades drink on their cots. With the sunset near, we completed setting up camp. Right now, I'm wiped out. My hands are covered in blisters from 3 hours of continuing digging trenches, my throat raw and swollen up in pain, and even my appetite disappeared. Tonight, I thought I'd stay by myself. The use of light and fire has been restricted to avoid the repeat surprise attack by Ustio. A guy from the unit named Franz brought over chocolate when I sat down on my cot to drink my hot coffee. Franz, who'd styled his hair in a mohawk before we left for Route 171, talked with me about his anger at Ustio and his desires for revenge. The subject drifted, and we laughed all at the usual bullshit. During our regular conversation, Captain Edhard clapped his hands on my shoulder and said, "Don't be so shocked at this. Learn to overcome the situation." He also told me that a powerful force to retake 171 has already been organized and headed to the front. As I write this, a fierce anger and hatred for Ustio wells up within me. These are the assholes who came up tails wagging to the major powers of their own country's profit, brought down their international community on us, and menaced their neighbors. These are the assholes who are resisting the times. These are the assholes who've been sent their best friends to their death. I've never forgive such dirty bastards. From the time I'll hear the sound of an Ustio reconnaissance plane above in the skies, my frustration and anger will grow even more. We'll beat Ustio. Count on it. Michael Khor. April 27th, 1995. Weather, sunny. Where do I even start writing? I don't even remember the last few days in much detail in the first place. Have my eardrums been ruptured? Even the clamor sounds sound so far away. On April 24th, 1995, I experienced my first real battle inside the Futuro Canal in southern Belka. Immediately after the order canceling the Route 171 operation came down, we were redeployed to the naval station at Futuro Canal. I think it was afternoon. Tremendous alarms sounded inside the port. I was taking a break on the wharf at the time, idly watching the tide roll away. The battlefield was a different world. Serene deception which would broken the constant by the terrific klaxon. Fear and anxiety pierced my very bones. That was my very first sensation. A frantic atmosphere covered the facility. Soon we'd gone to the general quarters and we'd been done it. A moment of silence. What broke the silence were piercing sounds of jets and machine gun fire, as if in response continuous explosions. My memory gets hazy from here. The color of blood and flames, rising black smoke. Rosenberg scared to death, firing his heavy machine gun at random, the emptiness in dead soldiers' eyes. Sounds of impacts, explosions, splashes, cries, screams, angry shouts. In the midst of this storm, I ran around carrying 10mm ammunition. I think that's right. A bullet whipped past my helmet from a fighter's strafing run and nearly ripped me to shreds. If I said I wasn't scared, I'd be lying my ass off. But all the same, I wanted to get on a heavy machine gun and knock down that damn fighter with my own two hands. I felt an inexpressible excitement. How long the battle went on, I do not know. Before I knew it, the sounds of the explosion from the fighters had disappeared, and only the sounds of the echoing port and the groans and cries. A fighter with one wing painted red soared far overhead where I stood. He seemed to be taking it easy, as if to mock us. I'm alive. They say there was a large-scale air battle near the border a few days before the battle. 2 enemy planes entered B-7R and took one of our military ace units head-on, or something. It seems the aircraft were knocked down by our aces and quickly ran back to base. That's the story. The prospects for restoring the facilities aren't good. The enemy could strike at any time. I don't know what mission we'll take on or even if we'll remain here. I only know one thing right now, and that's I'm on the battlefield. Michael Khor. May 14th, 1995. The invasion of the Belkan homeland by the Ustio-Osean Federation coalition begins. Our forces at the Futuro Canal have been dispersed after the last attack. The Tolton Company has also left the naval station. We are now concealed in the vicinity of the river. As we retreated, we managed to scrape together 2 50 caliber heavy machine guns, 40mm grenade launcher, light armored vehicle, and a number of RPGs, as well as each of our standard gear. Frankly, the equipment is bad jokes. The enemies who robbed us of the canal are now sending personnel in and assault vehicles from their ships, with intent of taking on the Belkan homeland by storm with their numbers and mobility. I worry about my mom back at home. If they should advance into the mainland, there's been a lot of operational redeployments, and we can't even receive letters. The personnel of Tolhun Company are made of 8. Our Captain Edhard, the Captain's right-hand man, Lieutenant Meyer, Corporal Smile, Piper, former pro football player, Corporal Bega, Private Cowboy, Schneiden, Private Rosenberg, who runs a women's underwear shop out of his home, Private Franz, who's the same age as me, and Private First Class Khor. We're hiding in the desert after abandoning the Futuro Canal, but as long as we have no official operation orders from headquarters, after our retreat, we're stalled here in the middle of the sand. Franz has made contact with HQ over the radio, but the guys up top can't decide on their next move. After our unexpected defeat at Futuro. In the meantime, conceal yourself at the mouth of the river and fire on coalition's forces coming up the river. Is the brass kidding? If we laid traps for the enemies navigating up the river in warships, fighters from the carrier would fly out here and burn us alive. And that'd be about all we can do. Captain Edhard told us there's no need to obey stupid orders and forbade us from firing whatsoever. We found the perfect cave to hide in temporarily in the desert hills. We monitored coalition forces landing from our base here and maintained regular contact with headquarters. Anyway, we've got to get out of here soon. We don't have enough food and supplies. A shame because the number of enemies coming up the river has been increasing day by day. Why is it that headquarters sends no aircraft? If we made an all-out attack with our forces again, suppressing my desire to shoot something, today I once watched the enemy through my scope. Michael Khor. May 18th, 1995. Weather, rain. It was an ordinary day on the battlefield, salting up my fried egg for breakfast, when I was roused by the sound of a Pavehawk's rotors, until I saw a black helo approaching at low altitude. Being on this battlefield was joyless. Quite a bit had already passed since we requested relief over the radio. I'd even thought headquarters had forsaken us. I just don't want to die of starvation, and I feel like there wasn't any point of being here. The work crew of the helos that saved us was prompt. They gave an impression of being true pros at their job. The longer the helo remains stationary in the sky, the easier it is for the enemy to attack. The longer their rescue takes. The longer they have to remain stationary. If, in that moment, a surface-to-air missile targets them, it's the end and game over. One of the relief crew gave out chocolate bars, and that nostalgic taste and sweetness was enough to make me remember that I'm still alive. Overcome by an indescribable joy, I embraced all my comrades when we arrived at the base helipad late that night. Only Captain Edhard did not break his hard expression. He had a conversation with the superior officer waiting for our arrival. Now I can sleep at ease. I'm gonna take a shower, eat roast beef to my heart's content, drink a gallon of milk, tuck into bed, and when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll write a letter to my mom. That's what was going through my head. When we arrived at the helipad, I saw the expression on Edhard walking away from his conversation with the superior officer. I had a bad feeling. No, I already had some idea inside the Pavehawk. About 5 hours from now, at 6 a.m., the Tolhun Company will join Operation Brandfeck and head directly for Tauborg in accordance with our orders from headquarters. Our movement to the destination will be by helo, and we will link up with the Belkan 8th Armored Division immediately on arrival. We will meet up at Heliport D2 at 0530, 30 minutes before the operation commences. You are to leave use of the period. You are to leave to use the period until 0530 at your own ends. As for description of the Duritz Air Force Base facility, when I arrived on the battlefield, I believed that what awaited us was the end of the war, victory. Only now am I thinking I don't want the end of my personal war to be meeting with my own death. But that's all I can seem to think about. There's no way I can say anything like that to my comrades, but I think the truth is surely that they're thinking the same thing right now. I want to come back alive. I just want to come back alive. That's the only feeling on the battlefield right now. Michael Khor. May 22nd, 1995. Tauberg, a place I rode in my dad's car to hunt deer when I was a kid. Entering the forest as the sun was beginning to rise, I take a breath and walk on. I continued downwind without a word, hiding behind the deer, who is sensitive to sound and can smell of humans. I was 10 the first time I pulled my rifle's trigger. The taste of hot chocolate I drank with my dad sitting on the old decaying tree was extraordinary. When the military facilities in Tauberg were constructed, my dad participated in movement against it. It was in Tauberg I learned from my father the art of living with nature, sometimes forcing it to yield and overcoming it. 10 years have passed since then. I now once again return to Tauberg. My dad is no longer by my side, and even the targets I aimed through my scope have changed. We deployed to Excalibur by Hilo, and it was just amazed at the installation's modern equipment. Excalibur appears to pierce the heavens with a place where at night you can hear the wolves howl on the other side of the fence. This landscape is something strange. Operation Brandfleck is some kind of operation to lead the main enemy force into firing range of Excalibur to utilize its chemical laser power to annihilate to the utmost and destroy the enemy in one fell swoop. We're ready. I've already had experience of being a marksman here for 10 years. After that, I'm just waiting for the enemy to enter the net. Michael Khor. May 30th, 1995. Weather, cloudy. The trap is one of the oldest ways of hunting. Netting results for comparatively little effort. This efficient method is used even today to exterminate pests like mice and cockroaches. On May 23rd, in the dawn covered in thick fog, Operation Brandfleck began on the initiative of Operational Headquarters. The main goal of the operation was to lure the enemy mercenary unit Golem Team into Excalibur's firing range and annihilate them at once. There were rumors going around that the Allied Forces mercenary unit known as Golem Team was pretty formidable. Even Command HQ was starting to earnestly pursue its destruction. I only found out that the plane with one red wing I sought for Turo was a fighter belonging to the unit after Excalibur fell. Tauberg's sword lays destroyed by the red-winged plane and a fighter seemingly accompanying it, and it was split viciously asunder with a thunderous rumble. The fall of Excalibur was a sight unlike that of the nightmarish medieval painting. Threading a laser network and penetrating through the center of the base, Golem Team showered all the missiles they had brought with them over Tauberg. I was assigned to the operate Corporal Berger's self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, and I participated in the battle from the woods in the vicinity of Excalibur. Some hours after the operation commenced, the enemy fighter squadrons arrived, and the corporal quickly up and fired. He was quite excited, expending bullets while continuously screaming obscenities. Some minutes after the battle commenced, a small AGM struck the ground feet away from our spag. Corporal Berger not appearing to notice this, I shouted, "VT Fuse," jumped from the cabin and hid in the treads for a moment, while he continued to fire into the sky. I haven't experienced any other explosion like that tremendous up close. The trees shivered, the spag was tossed inches off the ground, and a blast tore my cheeks and ears. I don't remember anything after that. When I returned to consciousness, it took some time for me to figure out if I was dead or alive. Some further hours passed before I realized I seemed to be alive. I figured I had to do something. Obvious action was to stand up, to send first thoughts throughout my body, to command my arms to move, to instruct my legs to bend. And to slowly begin moving. Eyes closed. I was in the midst of silence in the forest, with a sensation that a profound amount of time had passed. Dusk had already set on Tauberg when I found Corporal Beggar's dead body. The parts of what was until a few hours ago of Corporal Beggar were scattered all in all directions. It was impossible to find them all. Grabbing my shrapnel-pierced leg, I slowly began to walk over toward the very center of the base. As I finally entered the center, there were corpses of dead soldiers, mountains of rubble, token combat medics walking around, and a smell of gasoline. There was not a single lovely thing. I ignored the medic calling in a raised voice, "Are you all right?" and continued walking. I see a tattoo of an audacious skeleton grasping a peace sign on the arm of a soldier on a stretcher. When I flipped the covering sheets, it was Rosenberg, now a complete mess. I got a blanket from a medic and took a seat on top of the rubble. Perhaps it was an officer, a bald man to come from the rear to confirm the situation, whose mouth formed a loose smile when he passed beside me in a grotesque high spirits. He patted the shoulders of the soldiers lucky enough to survive, and tossed words of encouragement with less than shit. He's a guy who doesn't come from the front for fear of his life. No, he's a clever guy, who happens to have the ability to avoid bad timing and bad places. I immediately picked him out and seeing him to be that type of man. It's obvious this country won't stop the war. Perhaps the trick overcoming the situation means the practice of eliminating your natural feelings of humanity, lies and falsehoods, and selfishly surviving. My friends are dead. My immediate family is in danger, and I have devoted my life to honor the pride. All that shit can do nothing. That's because I don't believe in this war anymore. Michael Khor. June 19th, 1995. Weather, sunny. War hatches from the egg of patriotism. All the friends I met on the battlefield, and all from whom I became separated. Loved Belka. Sacrificed all for the sake of country. Slogans like that flooded the streets before the start of the war. We who were born unto Belka were patriots from the moment we came into this world. In our earliest members, we were electrified by the speeches of politicians, and from military parades, we would line up early in the morning. We forgot not to gratitude even as we ate our meager daily meals. And when the snow melted and spring came, we kissed the national flower time and time again. We did not stop to think why it was we loved the fatherland. My father, my father's father, and his father as well. They all love this country we call Belka. And we took great pride. Countries whose ideals different from Belka's were the enemy, and it was their destiny to be laid waste. You might call this chauvinistic mindset, but this was how much of the fatherland thought. I too loved Belkan land from a young age, its trees, its waters. I took pride in it all. I was convinced that this land was the center of the world and that it was everything. Upon the Belkan fatherland, which I had taken, my heart fell quiet. The nuclear demon. The fissure between politicians and its military is final. No, within the military, we have surely been accelerated towards a state of division and lawlessness. Those who wish to continue the war on its current path, those who wish to push forward with a quick resurrection in a post-war era, and those who want to lay down their weapons and desert, and those who are ruled by their own self-interest. The battlefield and the heartland alike have fallen into anarchy. There are rumors that even those who pressed the button were our brothers. Why? They say that there were several nuclear explosions at the same time. I'd heard the rumors that the military had been developing a small type of nuclear weapon called the radioactive detonator over the years. The radioactive detonator is extremely powerful yet quite small, outwardly seeming to resemble an ordinary hand grenade. Its blast radius can be adjusted in increments of 100 yards, and it can be detonated by simply moving a slide-type trigger on the upper part of the detonator. I bet the wicked are in love with this kind of weapon. In the midst of the confusion between rumor and truth, I could not get in touch with my mother as I usually do. Even as our idiot military leaders try to continue the war, even though politicians benefit and profit from the war, this war is ending. The outcome is decided. Belka lost. I have no respect or sense of hope for our country or politicians anymore. There's no way I could hate my country, but a country as ignorant thing after all. I couldn't see how history and tradition had become bound in chauvinistic politics. No, it's that I tried not to see it. Having seen life and death before my own eyes, I can now see something, even if ever so indistinct. Totalitarian ideals led sometimes to horror. I found pride and truth in the fact that I am Michael Khor, and now I want to bring an end to the war. A ceasefire with the Allied nations and Belka's disarmament are beginning. The war has ended to a point of fact, and faces of the soldiers are brightened and bit by bit. There are those who rouse young soldiers and call for sneak attacks and guerrilla warfare, but there are none who will lend them an ear. A few days ago, an old soldier named Kutzelinger made trouble. It said he tried to intimidate young soldiers, my own subordinates, into guerrilla warfare. It seems he encouraged them with a gun to their heads. Just as Kurtzinger was about to pull the trigger, some soldiers came around to stop it somehow. Kurtzinger was violent and naturally hated by even his subordinates. In fact, it seemed he also had many enemies. Early the next morning, Kutzinger's corpse was found in his underwear, tied to a drum can. Unsurprised at the sight, some more scrupulous soldiers ultimately buried his body in the woods. The system and principles which have had up to now, are gone. The war is over, and we are going back to being civilians. It'll be like we're all in peril. There also seem to be some guys who, after returning to the homeland, plan to return the favor of being disgraced on the battlefield with the interest of a bullet. Hatred is an external flame, kept lit by those who bear the feelings. Trying to seem as inconspicuous as possible on the battlefield means to remain concealed, drawing only thin breaths. Maybe it's a dumb thing to say, but maybe you'll remember it when someday the shells rain again. A notice has been issued to the remaining units are to surrender to the Allied forces immediately. Maybe I'm not taking things into serious enough, but when I think about the state of things, it's only natural that I'm trying not to think about my mom or Captain Edhard, who is still missing. I don't give a damn about how the Allied forces will go either. I imagine things can only get better from here on out. Even after arriving at Anfang and surrendering, I'll have to endure confinement by the Allied forces a little while. But just a little more patience. The Allied forces are human too. Wouldn't do to be unreasonable or anything. I survived. The war is over. Anfang. I've never been here before, but I'll remember this place my whole life. Michael Khor. Wow. What a terrifying and truthful story from the side of the Belkans. Lest we not forget that they detonated 7 nuclear weapons on themselves to stop Allied forces from continuing their advance into their homeland. I'd love to know what they were thinking when they decided that was the best option to end a war. But, then again, who will ever know? Thanks for listening, guys. And remember, you're on the air with the Formal Psycho.